Spa denies service to tattooed cancer survivor. Yelp review forces public apology within hours. The air inside Aura Wellness Spa tasted of money and peace. It was an expensive taste, a curated blend of chilled cucumber, Tahitian vanilla, and a faint, almost subliminal whisper of eucalyptus. Alara Vance breathed it in, a long, slow inhalation that was supposed to signal her nervous system to stand down. For the first time in 3 years, she was trying to let it. The thick, snowy white robe they'd given her felt like a hug from a cloud, cinched at the waist with a braided silk cord. Her bare feet sank into a plush runner, the color of sea foam. Every surface was smooth, every corner was rounded, every sound was muted, from the gentle, invisible trickle of a hidden water feature to the hushed, reverent tones of the other patrons gliding through the halls, like serene, well-moisturized ghosts. This was a gift to herself. The final milestone. She had beaten it. The word itself, cancer, still felt ugly and sharp in her mind, a piece of broken glass she'd learned to live with. But the war was over. The 6 rounds of chemical warfare that had scorched her from the inside out. The double mastectomy that had left her feeling like a hollowed-out vessel. The slow, painful reconstruction. And finally, the art, the reclamation. She ran a hand over the collar of the robe, just above her heart. Beneath the thick cotton, her skin was a canvas of victory. Delicate cherry blossoms, their petals the color of a sunrise blush, swirled across her chest, their branches weaving over the faint, silvery lines of surgical scars. It wasn't a cover-up. It was a transformation. It was her story, rewritten in ink and artistry, turning a battlefield into a garden. Her oncologist had called it the most beautiful act of defiance he'd ever seen. Today was for the rest of her. The body that had carried her through the fire, the deep tissue massage she'd booked, was meant to be a final exorcism of the phantom aches and the bone-deep weariness that clung to her like a shroud. 1 hour of pure, unadulterated peace. She'd saved for 6 months for this single day. At the most exclusive, most celebrated wellness sanctuary in the city, a woman with a sleek, severe blonde bob and a white pantsuit that looked more like armor than clothing glided towards her. Her face was a mask of serene professionalism, her smile calibrated to a precise, welcoming, yet distant 15 degrees. A small, gold nameplate on her lapel reads Serafina, Director. "Welcome to Aura, Ms. Vance," she said, her voice as smooth and cool as the marble floors. "I trust you're finding our environment centering." "It's beautiful," Alara said, her own voice feeling rough and out of place in the pristine air. "I've been looking forward to this all year." Seraphine's smile tightened. "By a millimeter. I was just reviewing your intake form. We're so pleased to be a part of your wellness journey." Her eyes, the color of a pale winter sky, did a swift, professional scan of Alara, from her face down to the hem of her robe. Then they stopped. Her gaze had snagged on the place where the very top of a single, dark green cherry blossom leaf peeked out from above the V-neck of Alara's robe. It was no bigger than a thumbnail, a tiny herald of the sprawling mural beneath. The shift was instantaneous. The serene mask didn't crack, but a frost formed over it. The calibrated smile vanished, replaced by a flat, neutral line. She took a half step back, a subtle, almost imperceptible retreat. "I'm afraid we have a problem," Serafina said, her voice losing its manufactured warmth and taking on a brittle chill. Alara's heart gave a nervous little lurch. "A problem? Did I fill out the form wrong?" "Not at all," Serafina said, her eyes fixed on that tiny speck of green ink. "It's a matter of our aesthetic policy, a standard we maintain to protect the purity of the Aura experience. For all our guests." Alara frowned, confused. "Aesthetic policy? I don't understand." Serafina finally met her eyes. The pale blue was now glacial. "Our establishment has a strict, no visible tattoos policy, Ms. Vance." The words hung in the cucumber-scented air, absurd and nonsensical. Alara almost laughed. "Oh," she said, a wave of relief washing over her. "It's fine. They'll all be covered by the towels and sheets during the massage. No one will even see them." "You don't understand," Serafina stated, as if speaking to a child. "The policy isn't about what other guests see. It's about the integrity of our brand. We cultivate an atmosphere of natural, unadorned beauty, a clean canvas, if you will. Tattoos, you must understand, are a disruption, a form of visual noise." Ilara's mind struggled to process the sheer arrogance of the statement. Visual noise. She thought of the artist, a woman named Hannah, who specialized in post-mastectomy tattoos. Her touch as gentle as a prayer. She remembered the months of collaboration, the tears of joy when she'd first seen the finished work in the mirror. She remembered feeling whole for the first time in years. "Are you saying you're refusing to serve me because of my tattoos?" Elara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We are saying we cannot make an exception to our policy," corrected, her tone implying that this was a perfectly reasonable and common business practice. "It would be unfair to our other patrons, who respect and appreciate the curated tranquility we provide." The lobby, which had felt so serene moments before, now felt like a stage. Elara became acutely aware of the other women in their white robes, sitting on plush armchairs, sipping their complimentary detoxifying teas. They weren't staring, not overtly, but she could feel the shift in the room's energy. The subtle turning of heads, the suddenly focused stillness. The trickling water sounded louder now, like a mocking giggle. A young attendant with wide, horrified eyes stood behind the front desk, frozen, her hand hovering over a keyboard. She looked about 20, her face a canvas of pure, unadulterated shock. Elara felt a hot flush of shame creep up her neck. It was an old, familiar feeling. The shame of being different, of being a problem, of her body being a subject of discussion and judgment. She had thought that feeling was behind her. "They're not just tattoos," Elara said, her voice low, but intense. She fought to keep it from shaking. "They're medical. They're reconstructive tattoos after a double mastectomy. From cancer." She hated saying the word, hated using it as a shield or an explanation. Her story was hers. She shouldn't have to offer up her deepest trauma to a stranger in a pantsuit to be deemed worthy of a massage. For the first time, a flicker of something annoyance, impatience, crossed Seraphine's face. "Many of our clients are on their own wellness journeys, Ms. Vance. We are sensitive to that. However, a policy is a policy. It ensures a consistent and high-quality experience for everyone. To us, ink is ink. Altering the body in such a permanent and artificial way is fundamentally at odds with the aura philosophy of celebrating the body in its natural state." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Celebrating the body in its natural state. What did a woman who ran a temple of Botox, fillers, and chemical peels know about a natural state? Elara's natural state, post-surgery, was a landscape of scars and grafted skin. This was her beautiful, defiant revision. "So, what my body has endured, what I have survived. That makes me ineligible for your tranquility." Elara's voice cracked on the last word. The public nature of it was the worst part. The silent, watching eyes. The judgment. She felt stripped bare. Not by the robe, but by this woman's casual, clinical cruelty. Serafina gave a small, tight sigh, a sound of profound inconvenience. "We would be happy to refund your deposit in full, of course," she said, as if this were a magnanimous gesture. She turned to the terrified young attendant at the desk. "Chloe, please process a full refund for Ms. Vance." Chloe, the attendant, looked from Seraphine's iron-clad face to Elara's crumbling one. Her own face was pale, but Serafina processed the refund, Chloe Serafina said, her voice dropping into a register of pure steel. It was an order that tolerated no dissent. Chloe's fingers trembled as she typed. Elara stood there, rooted to the seafoam runner, the plush robe, suddenly feeling like a costume for a part she had failed to land. The air, once so fragrant with peace, now felt thick and suffocating. She could feel the stares of the other women, a mixture of pity and a palpable relief that they were not the one being cast out. No one spoke up. No one met her eye. The silence of the bystanders was its own kind of violence. With a final dismissive nod, Serafina turned and glided away, her white suit disappearing down a corridor, leaving Elara alone in the center of the silent, pristine lobby. The only sound was the clicking of Chloe's keyboard. Each tap a tiny nail being hammered into the coffin of a day she had so desperately needed. Elara didn't wait for the refund receipt. She turned, her movements stiff and robotic, and walked back to the changing rooms. She tore off the cloud-like robe and let it fall to the floor. As she pulled her simple jeans and t-shirt back on, her own clothes felt foreign. Coarse, she looked. In the mirror, her eyes were wide and glistening with unshed tears. For a brief, terrible moment, she saw what Serafina saw, a flawed, marked, disruptive thing. She walked out of the spa without a word, pushing through the heavy glass doors into the bright, indifferent sunlight of the afternoon. The city's distant siren, the rumble of traffic crashed over her. a harsh contrast to the curated silence she'd just been expelled from. She made it to her car, a modest 10-year-old sedan that suddenly felt like the only safe place on earth. She got in, shut the door, and the carefully constructed dam of her composure didn't just break. It exploded. A sob tore from her throat, a raw, ragged sound she hadn't made since the darkest days of her diagnosis. It wasn't about the massage, it wasn't even about the money she'd painstakingly saved. It was about the utter soul-crushing humiliation. It was the casual dismissal of her entire journey. She had fought a war for her body, had reclaimed its scarred territories with ink and blossoms, only to be told her victory flag was an offensive piece of visual noise. She pounded the steering wheel once, twice, the impact jarring her arm. The tears came in a hot, blinding torrent. Every insecurity, every fear she had worked so hard to overcome, rushed back in. The feeling of being unclean from the chemo, the feeling of being misshapen after the surgery, the feeling of being other, apart, a walking tragedy. Serafina hadn't just denied her a service. She had taken a giant eraser to the 2 years of hard emotional work Elara had done to feel beautiful again. She slumped against the driver's side window. The cool glass, a small comfort against her burning cheek. The world outside blurred into a watercolor wash of traffic and pedestrians. She was invisible. Just another person crying in their car. For a long time, that's all she did. She let the grief and rage pour out of her until she was hollowed out, her throat raw, her head pounding. The pristine vanilla-scented air of the spa seemed to mock her from memory. Natural, unadorned beauty. The phrase echoed in her mind, a venomous taunt. Slowly, the storm inside her began to subside, leaving behind an eerie, exhausted calm. She took a shuddering breath and sat up, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red-rimmed. A mess. But then, her gaze dropped slightly. In the mirror, she could see the very top of her t-shirt collar and just peeking out, the same tiny, dark green cherry blossom leaf that had so offended Serafina. Something shifted in her chest. It wasn't a roar. It was a flicker. A tiny, pilot light of the defiance that had gotten her through everything else. That leaf wasn't visual noise. It was the first leaf of spring after a long, nuclear winter. It was proof of life. Hannah, the tattoo artist, had called it the bud of courage. And this woman, this Serafina with her sterile philosophy and her ice-water veins, had tried to shame her for it, had succeeded, for a few minutes, in making her feel ashamed of her own survival. The flicker grew into a slow, hot burn. It wasn't the wild, messy rage from before. This was different. It was cold, clear, and focused. The shame that had been smothering her began to recede, replaced by a crystalline indignation. She had spent 3 years being a patient, a survivor, a victim. She had been poked, prodded, scanned, cut, and poisoned. And she had taken it all with a quiet, desperate grace because she had to. She had been polite in the face of terror, composed in the face of agony. She was done being quiet. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers were still trembling slightly, but her purpose was steady. She opened the Yelp app, found Aura Wellness Spa, and hit the button to write a review. She stared at the blank screen, the blinking cursor, a silent invitation. 1 star. She tapped it without hesitation. And then, she began to write. She didn't write in anger. She wrote with the chilling precision of a surgeon. She started by describing the spa, its beauty, its promises of peace and tranquility. She painted a cinematic picture of the serene atmosphere, the very one she had been so captivated by just an hour earlier. Then, she described the confrontation. She used Seraphine's exact words. Purity of the aura experience. Visual noise. A policy is a policy. Ink is ink. She laid them out like evidence at a crime scene. And then, she told them why she had the tattoos. She didn't hold back. She wrote about the diagnosis, the fear, the brutal treatments. She wrote about losing her breasts, about feeling like a stranger in her own body. She wrote about the scars, not as something ugly, but as the price of admission back into the world of the living. And she wrote about the cherry blossoms. She described them in loving detail, how they followed the lines of her reconstruction, turning a landscape of loss into a testament of hope. These tattoos are not a disruption to your aesthetic, she wrote, her fingers flying across the screen. They are my body's triumphant song, after a long, brutal silence. I survived an illness that tried to erase me. I reclaimed my body and made it a place of beauty again. And today, for the crime of wearing my survival on my skin, I was publicly shamed and ejected from Aura Wellness Spa. I was told my story. My victory was fundamentally at odds with their brand. She paused, reading it over. It was raw, honest, and devastating. She needed one more thing. The visual impact. She took a deep breath. She angled the phone down, unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of her shirt just enough, and took a picture. It wasn't a provocative photo. It was a portrait of the art itself. The camera focused on the intricate swirl of petals and branches over her heart. The delicate shading, the way the ink settled into her skin. The lighting from the car window was soft, catching the subtle textures. It wasn't a medical photo. It was a piece of art. And just at the edge of the frame, you could see the curve of her jaw and the single, glistening track of a tear she hadn't bothered to wipe away. It was a photo of strength and vulnerability, all in one frame. She attached the photo to the review. For the title, she wrote, "Denied service for being a cancer survivor with reconstructive tattoos. Apparently, my scars are more acceptable than the art that healed them." She read the whole thing one last time. Her heart was pounding, a wild drum against her ribs. This was terrifying. She was putting her deepest wound on display for the entire world, but the alternative to slink away in silence, letting that woman's cruelty stand unchallenged, was unthinkable. She hit post. For a moment, nothing happened. The review was just there, floating in the digital ether. She felt a sudden wave of doubt. What if no one cared? What if people agreed with Serafina? What if she'd just invited more judgment, more ridicule? She put her phone down, face down, on the passenger seat. She couldn't look at it. She started the car, the engine rumbling to life, and just drove. No destination in mind. She just needed to move. An hour later, she found herself at a small public park, overlooking the city skyline. She bought a lukewarm coffee from a vendor and sat on a bench, watching families play. Her phone had been silent. The lack of notifications felt both like a relief and a confirmation of her insignificance. Maybe it was over. Maybe her tiny protest would sink without a trace. Finally, her curiosity got the better of her. With a sense of dread, she picked up her phone and turned it over. The screen was a blinding supernova of notifications. It was completely frozen. Dozens of banners from Yelp, Twitter, Instagram, and her text messages were layered on top of each other, a digital traffic jam. She had to hard reboot the phone just to get it to function. When it came back to life, the deluge began again. Her Yelp review had hundreds of comments. "This is monstrous. Aura Wellness should be ashamed. Sending you so much love and strength. Your tattoos are beautiful." Someone had taken a screenshot of the review, including her photo, and posted it to Twitter. It had been retweeted over 10,000 times. A local news blogger with a massive following had written a scathing article titled, "Aura of Ugliness. Exclusive Spa Shames Cancer Survivor." It was the #1 trending topic in the city. Her phone buzzed with a text from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. It was a short, shaky video file. She tapped play. The video was shot from behind the front desk at Aura. It was wobbly, clearly filmed in secret. She could hear her own voice, trembling but defiant, saying, "They're reconstructive tattoos after a double mastectomy." And then, Seraphine's voice, cold and clear as a bell. "Many of our clients are on their own wellness journeys. A policy is a policy. Ink is ink. Fundamentally at odds with the Aura philosophy." The video ended. A new text message appeared below it. "This is Chloe from the Spot. I am so sorry for what happened. I quit a half hour ago. I sent this to the news blogger. I hope it helps. You are a warrior." Alara stared at the screen, her coffee forgotten. It was happening. A tidal wave was rising, and she hadn't even seen it coming. Her small act of defiance, her single story, had become a rallying cry. The wave grew into a tsunami. By evening, it was national news. An A-list actress, herself a vocal advocate for breast cancer awareness, shared the story on her Instagram, calling Seraphine's actions a disgusting betrayal of what it means to support women. A famous rock star, known for his own extensive tattoos, tweeted, "Hey, #Aura Wellness. Tattoos are stories. Maybe try reading one sometime instead of just judging the cover. #Aura of Hate." The hashtag was everywhere. #Aura of Hate. It was brutal, catchy, and it stuck. People began digging. They found Aura's corporate partners, a luxury yoga wear brand, an organic tea company, a line of high-end skincare. Within hours, all three had issued public statements on social media, condemning Aura's policy and announcing they were severing all ties, effective immediately. The Aura Wellness Spa's Yelp page became a digital wasteland, a graveyard of one-star reviews. People posted pictures of their own tattoos, telling their own stories of survival, of memory, of art. The page's rating plummeted from a pristine 5.0 to a dismal 1.2. Their online booking system, as Chloe had predicted, crashed not from new bookings, but from a coordinated flood of cancellations and fake appointments, made under names like Karma Isabich and Inked and Proud. Ilara watched it all unfold from the bubble of her small apartment, her phone glowing like a portal to another reality. It was terrifying and exhilarating. She wasn't driving it. She was just the stone that had started the avalanche. Messages of support poured in from strangers around the world. Women sent her pictures of their own mastectomy tattoos, rising from ashes, intricate lace patterns, shields of armor. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. The power flip was swift and brutal. The next morning, 2 news vans were parked outside the gleaming facade of Aura Wellness Spa. The place was closed. A simple, printed sign on the door read, "Closed for a private staff event." Seraphine's immaculately curated world was burning down around her, and the fire was being broadcast live. Her personal social media, once a pristine gallery of wellness tips and minimalist aesthetics, was overrun. Her face was now the thumbnail for dozens of YouTube commentary videos with titles like, "The CEO Who Hates Cancer Survivors" and "Woke Karen Gets Destroyed by the Internet." Ilara didn't revel in it. There was a strange, hollow feeling that came with watching someone's life implode, even someone who had caused her so much pain. She stayed inside, ignoring the calls from reporters and producers, who somehow got her number. She had said what she needed to say in her review. The rest was just noise, a different kind of visual noise. Late that afternoon, the apology dropped. It wasn't a tweet or a half-hearted Instagram post. It was a full-blown press release, posted on a hastily created website, auralistens.com. It was accompanied by a video. Serafina sat in a sterile white room, not unlike her spa. She had swapped her power suit for a soft, cream-colored cashmere sweater. Her hair was softer, her makeup minimal. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but Ilara suspected these tears were professionally applied. "There are no words to express my profound regret," she began, her voice thick with practiced remorse. "My interaction with Ms. Ilara Vance was a catastrophic failure of my own judgment, and a betrayal of the very principles of compassion and healing that I have built my life around," she went on, hitting all the PR-approved buzzwords. Unconscious bias, teachable moment, listening and learning, deep personal reflection. She announced that the no tattoos policy had been immediately and permanently abolished. She announced that Aura would be donating a substantial sum to a prominent breast cancer research foundation. "But apologies and donations are not enough," Serafina said, looking directly into the camera lens. "I owe my apology to Ms. Vance herself. Ilara, if you are watching, what I said to you was inexcusable. It was cruel. I failed to see the beautiful story of strength you carry on your skin. I allowed a misguided and superficial policy to blind me to your humanity. I hope, one day, you can find it in your heart to forgive me." It was a masterclass in crisis management. It was also utterly disingenuous. Ilara felt nothing watching it, except a distant, clinical pity. But the internet wasn't finished. The apology video was dissected and ridiculed within minutes. The top comment on the YouTube upload was simple. "She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught." And then, the real twist came. It didn't come from an influencer or a journalist. It came from the depths of the comment section on the news blogger's original article. A user with a generic, anonymous name posted a simple, devastating question. "Is anyone going to mention that the owner of Aura, Serafina Vance, is married to Liam Vance, as in, Ilara Vance's own brother? This isn't just a business being cruel. This is family." The comment was a match thrown into a vat of gasoline. It took less than an hour for the blogger to verify it. A new article went up, and this one was an atomic bomb. "Spa owner who shamed cancer survivor is her own sister-in-law." The story reframed itself instantly, twisting into something far darker and more intimate. The public humiliation wasn't just a random act of corporate prejudice. It was a deeply personal cruelty, layered with years of unspoken history. The narrative now had a second villain. Liam. Ilara's phone rang. The caller ID was a name she hadn't seen in almost 2 years. Liam, her brother. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the decline button. Against her better judgment, she answered, "Ilara Ellie." "Thank God you answered." His voice was frantic. laced with a panic she'd never heard from her cool, perpetually composed older brother. "What do you want, Liam?" she asked, her voice flat. "You have to fix this," he said, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "You have to tell them I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know she had that stupid policy. My business partners are calling me. My investors. Seraphine's life is one thing, but this is destroying me." Elara felt a bitter laugh bubble up in her throat. Of course. It was about him. It was always about him. "Destroying you," she repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Let me tell you about being destroyed, Liam." "No, you don't understand," he pleaded. "That spa. That was my money. My inheritance. I put everything into her brand, into her vision. If Aura goes down, I go down with it. Everything." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, ugly and sharp. The inheritance from their parents. The money Liam had been given control of after their deaths. The money that was supposed to be split between them. The money she had begged him for a small piece of when her insurance wouldn't cover the full cost of her reconstructive surgery. He had refused. He'd given her a lecture about fiscal responsibility, about how he was investing the money for their long-term future. He had invested it in his wife's temple of purity, a place that would one day cast out his own sister for the scars of an illness he couldn't be bothered to help her with. "You chose her vision over your own," Sister Elara said, the realization hitting her with the force of a physical blow. "You knew I was sick. You knew I was struggling. You let me go through all of that alone, while you were funding this monument to superficiality. Do you have any idea what that's like? To beg your own brother for help and be turned away." There was silence on the other end of the line, thick with shame. "Ellie, I didn't think." "No," she cut him off. "You didn't think. That's the problem. You never have." He changed tactics. The desperation in his voice turned into a raw, pathetic plea. Okay, you're right. I was a terrible brother. I was an idiot. A monster. You're right about everything. But please, you can't let this ruin me. I'll give you the money. All of it. Your half of the inheritance. I'll transfer it to you right now. Just, please, put out a statement. Tell them I wasn't involved in the decision at the spa. Tell them I've always supported you. Anything, just make it stop." And there it was. The moral dilemma, served up on a silver platter of desperation. The money she was owed. The money that would solve every financial worry she had. It could be hers, in an instant. All she had to do was lie for him. Just a small, public lie to help the brother who had abandoned her save face. It was tempting. It was so wrong. But God, it was tempting. That money would be freedom. It would mean she wouldn't have to work 2 jobs to pay off her lingering medical debt. It would mean security. She thought about it. She pictured the money in her bank account. She pictured the relief. Then, she pictured herself, standing next to him, propping him up, validating his narrative, while betraying her own. She thought of the women who had sent her photos of their tattoos. The strangers who had rallied to her side because she had told the unvarnished truth. What was her integrity worth? Was there a price on it? She took a deep breath. "No, Liam. No." "What do you mean? No," he sputtered. "Elara, I'm offering you everything. You're offering me a bribe to clean up a mess you made," she said. And for the first time in the conversation, her voice was perfectly calm. The clarity was a cold, clean thing. "You're not offering it out of love or remorse. You're offering it out of fear. You made your choice years ago, Liam. You chose your wife's brand over your family. You invested in her vision of a perfect, unblemished world. Well, this is the part of the world that isn't perfect. This is the part that has scars. And you don't get to buy your way out of it." A choked, desperate sound came from the other end of the line. "Keep your money," Elara said, the words feeling more powerful than any deposit ever could, or what's left of it. "You have to live with your choices, both of you." She ended the call. She sat in the quiet of her apartment, the silence buzzing with the ghosts of that conversation. She had done it. She had turned down a fortune to hold on to something priceless. Herself. The story had one final, unforgettable visual. 2 days later, a photo surfaced, taken by a paparazzo with a long lens. It showed Serafina and Liam Vance getting into a black SUV. They looked haggard, defeated. But that wasn't the viral part. The viral part was what was happening in the background. On the pristine white marble wall of the now shuttered Aura Wellness Spa, someone had projected a gigantic, building-sized image. It was the photo from Elara's Yelp review. There, 10 stories high, for the entire city to see, was her testament. The intricate cherry blossoms, the art, the strength, the single tear. It was a haunting, beautiful, and devastating piece of public art. A digital ghost reclaiming the space from which it had been exorcised. The ultimate WTF moment. No one ever found out who did it. Ilara suspected it might have been a collective of street artists who had heard her story. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a young woman named Chloe, using her newfound freedom to make one last powerful statement. Ilara didn't need a spa anymore. She found her peace in the quiet dignity of her own skin. She found her community in the messages and stories from thousands of strangers who saw their own battles reflected in hers. She had been denied entry into a manufactured temple of wellness, only to discover that she had been the sanctuary all along. Beauty isn't about erasing scars. It's about how we choose to wear them. And cruelty, no matter how beautifully branded, always collects its debt. Where are you reading this from? Drop your city, your state, your country. Let's see how far this story travels. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next justice twist.